I'm going to start with the sponsors, okay? And that will hopefully give the other guys a chance to get back home and get set up. Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Koningsberg in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Ruvain ben Labish, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nisan Hara Nisan ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. The many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, Cheryl Scher, her children, and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva. A Week of Learning by Sam and Shifra Coleman, in memory of his mother, Sarah Rachel Bas Avraham. Also a Week of Learning by Laila and Siggy Bessler, in memory of her mother, Brendel Bas Yechiel. Also, today is a day of learning plus Torah Fund by Harriet Friedman, Sharon and Fred Lisker, in memory of Harriet's father and Sharon's grandfather, Yaakov ben Yitzchak. Yesterday, we said, was a day of learning by Debbie and Jeffrey Weintraub, in memory of her father, Yonah ben Zev Halevi. That is it. May the Shemas have an aliyah, Kranka Rafia, Velti Yashir, Shema Talia, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael a good Gaben Shtiar.
Right.
Right? Okay. By the way, for those who weren't aware, there was a notice that went out that to include in your Misha Berach's Harav Yaakov Tzvi ben Liba, okay? That is Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs.
Oh.
Apparently is being treated now, just announced he's being treated for cancer.
Oy.
Don't know what the variety, but if you want to keep that in mind. Okay. Today is the 19th of October. I point that out only because in a little more than a month, we will be finishing up Eruvin, okay? And then we'll be going on to Psachim, right? Which we all hope will be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. We had gotten to the top of Ayin Aleph, Amud Aleph, the other day. That's where we stopped. Okay? I want to make a quick minute or two of review, and then we'll go into the new material. We saw there was this long Breita, 6 parts actually to the Breita. And in that Breita, it pointed out a number of aspects in regards to the whole question of relinquishing rights. The first 3 parts of the Breita gave positive, I'll say, statements where it was possible to relinquish rights. The last 3 parts of the Breita gave statements where it was not appropriate or not feasible to relinquish rights. Okay, and so that was what the Gemara is going to be going and discussing. We saw also, remember that just going back to the very bottom of Ayin Amud Beis, okay? That's where I'm going to pick up today. Okay, it's a few lines before we ended yesterday. Right, it's about 2 lines from the bottom of Ayin Amud Beis Tashma. Okay, this way hopefully the other guys will get on shortly. It said, listen to the following Braita. And we pointed out that here the Gemara had discussed the issue of an heir. Okay, does the heir have the power, I'm going to say momentarily, to relinquish rights or not? Okay, so the Braita then says, Yisrael v'ger sheruyin b'megura achat. Okay, we come back to the situation of a Jew and a convert who are living in the same grain silo, grain area. Okay, they have apartments, 2 apartments there, assuming that it's on the same chatzer. Okay, umeit ger mi ba'od yom, and the convert died while it was still day. In other words, Friday afternoon. Okay, and remember, a convert does not have any heirs. Okay, in the sense in Jewish law. And so that's why we went from the previous discussion, and the Gemara then leads to this one. Okay, what about if there are no previous heirs? Who's going to take over? Okay, we can't say inherit, but who's going to acquire that property? Right? Does that person have this same power for the moment that the heir would have if we said that the heir is an extension of the deceased? Okay, that was part of the question that Abaye had asked. And we determined that it's very possible that that's the case. So now the Gemara is developing this case, this situation. So the convert has died while it was daytime. And now on top of Ayin Aleph, Amud Aleph, Afal pi shehechzik Yisrael acher b'nechasav, even though another Jew, okay, has taken the possessions of the convert, okay, now we have 2 Jews, okay, in that same area. What happens? Oser, says the Gemara, right? That second Jew prohibits the first Jew from carrying into the chatzer. Mishecha shecha, if it occurred, the death occurred after dark. In other words, the implication was that perhaps the convert could have made a eruv with the Jew there. Afal pi shelo hechzik Yisrael acher. Okay, even though it's possible that another Jew does not take possession of the convert's property, right? Eino oser. Okay, so even if it were not a Jew, okay, so therefore that does not prohibit the Jewish resident of that chatzer from carrying in and out. So this is where we were ending up yesterday. Ha gufa kasha. This Braita itself indeed is problematic. Amart, on the one hand, right, you say as follows, mi ba'od yom, that the convert died while it was still daylight, right? Afal pi shehechzik, even though the property was, let's say, acquired or took possession of. Velo mebaye, and we certainly don't, it's not necessary then to say, ki lo hechzik, if it was not taken possession of. So in other words, why did you have to bring that other element in to the discussion of the Braita? Adraba, just the opposite, says the Gemara. Ki lo hechzik, lo asar. Just the opposite. We wanted to be able to say that where the property was not even taken possession of, it still will not prohibit the other Jew from carrying in that chatzer. Now, Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, Ema, I would say, Afal pi shelo hechzik. Rephrase the Braita and say so that if the property is not acquired or taken possession of. Vaha, afal pi shehechzik katani. But the Gemara says, but wait, our earlier part of the Braita said even if the property was taken possession of, that's what was taught. And therefore the Gemara wants to clarify. Hachi ka'amar, this is what it means to tell us. Afal pi shelo hechzik mi ba'od yom, even though the convert's property was not taken possession of while it was still day, ela michashecha, but rather after nightfall, kevan dahavale lahachzik mi ba'od yom oser. Because had it been that he had acquired it, a Jew acquired it while it was still day, then that Jew could have prohibited the other Jew, the earlier dweller in the chatzer, from carrying. Meshecha shecha, however, once the convert died after dark, afal pi shelo hechzik Yisrael acher, even though the property of the convert may not have been taken possession of by another Jew, eino oser. It does not prohibit that earlier Jewish dweller. Afal pi shelo hechzik Yisrael acher. Okay, and then we continue, even though we say it wasn't acquired by another Jew. Okay, what happens? V'lo mebayeh. And we therefore would not be necessary to have to say ki hechzik when it is acquired by another Jew. But the Gemara says ad rabba ki hechzik asar. But just the opposite, we do need to say that and include it in the Braita, because if that property was acquired by another Jew, it would prohibit the earlier Jewish dweller from carrying in that chatzer. Now, Amar Rav Papa. So Rav Papa now says again, Ema afal pi shehechzik. I would say it even if even if it was acquired, the possession, the property was acquired. Baha afal pi shelo hechzik katani. But here it says even though it wasn't acquired, that's what's being taught. Hachi ka'amar, this is what it means to tell us. Afal pi shehechzik mishecha shecha, even though it may have been taken possession of after dark. Kevan delo havale lahachzik mi ba'od yom, eno oser. Even though it's such that he did not acquire it while it was still daylight, it still does not prohibit the earlier Jewish resident. Katani mihat, but nevertheless, okay, it's taught Resha Oser, Omai Oser. It said that it forbids, it prohibits him. What do we mean when we say there that it prohibits him? Let him just relinquish the rights. My Oser, what do we mean then when we say that it prohibits him? The Katani, because it teaches it ad sheyivatel, until the person comes to relinquish the rights. Until that other Jew, okay, who acquired it would relinquish the rights. Now we go to another answer to try to explain the Braitas as challenges, right, to Rav Nachman. Rabbi Yochanan Omer, matnitin mani, Our Mishnah is according to whom? Okay, Beit Shammai he. It's according to Beit Shammai de Amre, for they say ein bitul reshut b'Shabbat, that there is no relinquishing of rights on Shabbos. Ditznan. Why? Because we have a Mishnah that teaches me matai notnin reshut be. Right? At what point may one relinquish rights? Beit Shammai omrim mi ba'od yom.
Yo,
Beit Shammai says it has to be during daytime.
so
Beit
I don't
Hillel
like
omrim mishetechshach. And Beit Hillel says even after dark. Amar Ula. My Tama de Beit Hillel. What's the reasoning, says Ula, of Beit Hillel? Ne'esa ka'omer kalach etzel yafot. Okay, why? Because we have a situation, he says, okay, that one can say, right, that that ideally, right, we can say I want to phrase it this way. You go after the better ones, the nicer ones. In other words, if you have a choice, let's say in Truma, okay, which are you supposed to take? Are you supposed to take the what's just sufficient, or are you supposed to act in such a way that you take the better option, the better choice, the better quality? Okay, so he's trying to make this comparison. Okay, so the Gemara then says, if that's the answer, Amar Abaye challenges it. Mate nachri b'Shabbat. Let's say you have a different example where you have the Gentile, okay, who died on Shabbat. Right? If that's the case, right, there's no way that he's going to relinquish his rights. There's no way that you can rent the location from him, things like that. Mai kalech etzel yafot ika. So what opportunity, I'm going to say, do you have here to go after the better quality, the better answer, the better approach? Elahacha bahak miflige. So Ula, however, says, okay, the following, right? And therefore we're going to see that Ula's suggestion is rejected, right? Because Abai now says, this is what they're arguing about. The Beit Shammai Savrei Bitul Rishut Mikne Rishutahu. Okay? Beit Shammai is of the opinion that the relinquishing of rights is similar to basically the transfer, the acquisition, okay, of those rights. Okay? Umikne Rishuta B'Shabbat Asur. And the acquisition of such rights on Shabbat is forbidden. Beit Hillel Savrei Istaluke Rishuta Ba'almahu. Okay, and Beit Hillel understands that the fact that one is going to relinquish rights is similar to giving up any claim. Okay, right, and therefore leaving the claim. Right. Right? Ve'istaluke rishuta b'Shabbat shapir dami. And the giving up of any claim, of any possession on Shabbat is an acceptable kind of act. Okay? And that can be done on Shabbat. And that's where this inyan ends. Okay. We're going to now continue with a new Mishnah. Okay? And this Mishnah sort of takes us in a little different direction, okay? And raises at least two questions I felt that could be addressed. Number one, a question is, with what do you make that Eruv Chatzerot? Is there we saw previously that it had to be enough foodstuffs for 2 meals. Okay, does it mean a complete meal, or does it mean, can it be something else? Okay. Second of all, let's assume that you have an existing partnership, okay, with one of your neighbors in the Chatzer, okay, somehow, right? And does that existing partnership, can that serve as a basis to say you're already got let's say, a leg up, a step towards having the Eruv? That, and therefore you don't need to put together the foodstuffs to make the Eruv, or even to make a Shituf Mabuot, okay? Because the existing partnership with regards to some food already means that you're, in a sense, combined. Right? So let's go into this new Mishnah, all right? And we'll see these, I think, these two items, right? Baal Habayit, okay, a homeowner, right? What happens? Shahaya shutaf l'shchinav, okay, lezeh bayayin ulezeh bayayin. So this three people there in the courtyard, they have a joint business, okay? The one has a partnership with one in terms of wine, and he has a partnership with another in terms of wine. Maybe he makes the wine with one, and he sells the wine with the other. Just an example. Ein tzrichin la'arev. Einan tzrichin la'arev, says the Mishnah. Okay? They need not join in an eruv or a shituf. Okay? However, lezeh b'yayin ulezeh b'shemen, if with this one he has an existing partnership with wine, and this one an existing partnership with oil, okay, tzrichin la'arev, he must do a eruv, okay, in this case, right? They cannot rely on the existing partnership. Rabbi Shimon Omer, says Rabbi Shimon, echad zeh ve'echad zeh einan tzrichin la'arev. According to Rabbi Shimon, regardless of whether the earlier partnership was based on the same product or based on different products, so long as there is this earlier partnership, Rabbi Shimon says there is no need to join in an eruv. Gemara, first of all, wants to ask, okay, we say that we're supposed to take whatever foodstuffs we have and put them together to make the eruv, because the word eruv really means mixture, combining.
Right.
Combining the foodstuffs, but it also implies that you're combining members of two households into a single unit. Okay? It's that symbolic aspect of it. And so the Gemara says, Amar Rav upikli echad. And Rav says there's a criteria here that the shituf has to be, okay, is only valid if it's in a single vessel, a single container. Amar Rava, says Rava, Daikanami. This seems to be the language of the Mishnah, seems to infer this as well. Why? Nami Dikatani, because it teaches Lazeh b'yayin uLazeh b'shemen, that this one is with wine and this one is with oil. Tzrichin la'arev, that one then must join to make an eruv. Right? I amart b'shlema reisha b'kli echad. If you're going to say then that according to the first part of the Mishnah, we're dealing with a single vessel, seifa b'shnei kelim, right? Then the end part of our Mishnah must be dealing with a situation of two different utensils, shapir, and this would seem to be a fine explanation. Ela I amart reisha b'shnei kelim. But if you're going to say that the first part of our Mishnah talks about the wine being in two separate utensils, v'seifa b'shnei kelim, and the latter part, when we're talking about wine and oil in two separate utensils, mali yayin v'yayin, mali yayin v'shemen. What difference does it make if you're talking about wine and wine, or what difference does it make if you're talking about wine and oil? Amar le Abaye. So Abaye tries to respond here. All right. Yayin v'yayin ra'ui la'arev. Okay, wine with wine,
You
it
can mix
seems
together.
suitable to mix them. Yayin v'shemen ein ra'ui la'arev. But wine and oil, excuse me, it does not seem suitable, sorry, to mix them. Okay, now going on. Okay, we come back now to our Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon Omer, echad zeh ve'echad zeh, regardless if it's mixing wine and wine or mixing wine and oil, right? Ein srichin la'arev. There is no, if they have this earlier partnership, there is no need to make a eruv. What is he implying? Va'afilu lezeh b'yayin, u'lezeh b'shemen, asks the Gemara, even if in one case we're talking wine, in one case we're talking oil, Amar Rabba. So Rabba now says, Hacha b'ma yeskinin, what are we talking about? Okay, and he's going to make a parallel, or attempt a parallel here. B'chatzer shebein shnei mabuot. We're talking about one courtyard that's located between two alleyways. Okay, 1 second. Okay, and if we look at diagram A on 71A3, okay, you can see there we have an example of in A, okay, one chatzer that's located between two mabuis, right? Right. So if those residents want to make a shituf in either one of those mabui, what's the situation, right? So the Rabbi Shimon Latame, and Rabbi Shimon follows his rationale. Ditnan, as was taught elsewhere in another Mishnah, Amar Rabbi Shimon, Lama hadavar domer, what is it similar to? L'shlosh chatzerot. And we had this example to three courtyards, okay? Namely, haptuchot zo lezo, and they open one to another, right? Uptuchot l'rishut harabim, and they also open up to the public domain, the public, right? That's diagram B, okay? They each chatzer opens up, right? The one on the right opens up to the middle, the one on the left opens up to the middle, and each of them also have an entrance, okay, or to the Rishus Harabim, right? Ivu shtayim hachitzonot, okay, we saw this previously. If the two outer courtyards arranged an eruv, im ha'emtzait, with the middle one, he muteret imahen, vehen mutarot ima. People can go from courtyard to the right to the middle, courtyard to the left to the middle. People can go from the middle to the right to the middle to the left. Okay. Ushtayim hachitzonot asurot zo imzo. But the two, what I'll call outer courtyards, the one on the far right and the one on the left, cannot interact by carrying from one to another. Right? Amar le Abai, mi dami, says Abai, is this really comparable? Hatam katani shtayim hachitzonot asurot. There in that Mishnah, we find it says clearly that the two outer, I'll call them courtyards, A and C, okay, or the one on the right, the one on the left, they clearly cannot interact, can't carry one to another. Hacha, here, katani ein srichin la'arev klal. But here in our case, you're saying they don't even have to make an eruv. My ein srichin la'arev. What do we mean when we say that they don't have to make an eruv? Right? Namely, shchenim bahade ba'al habayit. Here we're talking about a situation, okay? Right? That the ones on the outer, okay, or the one in A, the outer ones don't have to make a shituf for the mabui, right? Right? Shchenim bahade ba'al habayit. Ava shchenim bahade hadade tzrichin la'arev. But those who are neighbors next to each other, who live in the two outers, they must join in an eruv, okay, to be with each other. In other words, so the one to the right to the one to the middle don't necessarily, or the middle to the left don't necessarily, but the outers do. Okay. Going on now on Amud Beis, V'Rav Yosef Amar. But Rav Yosef is going to give a different explanation of this text, of this Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon, V'Rabbanan beplugta the Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, V'Rabbanan kamiflage. According to Rav Yosef, the argument between Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis in our Mishnah is similar to another argument, a dispute between Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and the rabbis. Ditnan, okay, as taught in a different Mishnah, Shemen shetzaf al gabe yayin. If you have oil floating on the top of a barrel of wine, v'nagat vul yom shemen, and a person who has vestigial impurity, in other words, they still had gone to the mikveh in the morning, but they are not
Wait till
or until nightfall, and therefore they're in the status of Tvul Yom. Okay, if they were to have contact with that oil, okay, lo pasal ela shemen bilvad. Okay, they'd only what do we want to say? Render invalid or render no longer viable the oil that's alone. The Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer, but Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, Shnehem chiburin ze lazeh, that the two of them, the oil and the wine, are connected one to the other. Okay? And what do we see, says Rav Yosef? Rabbanan ki Rabbanan. The rabbis in our Mishnah take the same position as the rabbis in this Mishnah, and Rabbi Shimon takes the same position as Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Now, Tanya, we have another Braita, however, okay, that's going to show a different position. And says as follows, the Braita, Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadai, Omer, he says, Echad ze ve'echad ze tzrichim la'arev. No, he disagrees. And he says, okay, that a Braita teaches that in the situation described by our Mishnah, okay, both this one and this one do have to make an Eruv. In other words, the existence of an earlier partnership, even if it's based on the same product, even that is still not sufficient, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Taddai, to say that they don't need to make an Eruv. Okay? Va'afilu lezeh b'yayin ulezeh b'yayin. And so therefore the Gemara naturally asks, even if that earlier partnership is based on the same product, this one with wine and this one with wine, Amar Rabba, says Rabba, Zeh ba beligo v'shafach, says Rabba. What is he explaining? Right? Namely, that if this one came with his jug of wine and he poured it into, let's say, into something, a barrel, right? Kuli alma lo plige dahave eruv. Then everyone would not argue that you do have a mixture. Okay? So if each of them, let's say, pour their wine together into the same barrel, that's one thing. Ki plige. But where do they argue? Kigon shelachu chavit shel yayin b'shutafut. Okay, they argue, however, what when they purchased, okay, this container, this barrel of wine, as partners. Rabbi Eliezer ben Taddai savar ein breira. Rabbi Eliezer ben Taddai is of the opinion that there is no retroactive determination of the fact that they now have this valid partnership and therefore don't need an Eruv. V'Rabbanan savrei yesh bereira. And the rabbis hold that there is retroactive determination, that by buying the barrel together, okay, that's a valid partnership and therefore do not need to make a new Eruv. Rav Yosef Amar, says Rav Yosef, Rabbi Eliezer ben Taddai v'Rabbanan b'somchin al shituf b'makom Eruv kemiflagei. Rav Yosef is saying, wait a second, their argument, okay, is really slightly different. Namely, the argument that they have is whether a shituf maba'ot is significant enough, okay, when you combine these alleyways, right, to, I'm going to use the word override, okay, the necessity for an Eruv Chatzerot, for a Eruv within a particular single Chatzer, okay? That's what they're really arguing about. Damar Savar, Ein Somchin, that one master holds that you don't rely on the making of Shituf Maba'ot to override, again, my language, the Eruv Chatzeros, right? Umar Savar Somchin. And the other master holds that you can rely on the making of Shituf Mabu'ot, okay, to override the Eruv Chatzeros of a single Chatzer. Now, Rav Yosef's going to continue. Amar Rav Yosef, Mana Aminala, on what basis do I say this? The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, that Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Halacha ka Rabbi Meir, that the law is like Rabbi Meir. V'amar Rav Bruna Amar Rav, and Rav Bruna said in the name of Rav, Halacha ka Rabbi Eliezer ben Taddai. Okay? So in other words, Rav here has stated two halachas, one ka Rabbi Meir and one ka Rabbi Eliezer ben Taddai. Okay? So in other words, why would that be necessary? Okay? In other words, he's actually given two chumras. My tama, what's the reasoning? Lav mishum dechad ta'amahu. Don't these two have the same reasoning? Asks the Gemara. Amar le Abaye, and Abaye then responds, Ve'i chad tama, if there are single reason, tarte hilchata lamali. Okay, then why do we have two specific halachas cited? Hakamash malan delo avdinin kitrei chumrei be'eruvin. Why? Because we say that we have a practice that we do not follow two stringencies in regards to eruvin. My Rabbi Meir. So then what do we mean when we say why decide like Rabbi Meir? Okay, that's the first question. Umay Rabbanan. And what about the rabbis? Tanya, as we taught in a Braita, Ma'arvin b'chatzerot bepat. Okay, that we say that we make our Erev Chatzeros utilizing bread. The Imratzu la'arei bayayin. But if they wanted to make their Erev Chatzerot utilizing wine, ein ma'arvin. We do not use it to make the Erev. Tatfin b'mabui bayayin. To make a shituf mabui, we may use wine. Ve'im ratzu lishtatef b'pat. And if they chose to utilize bread to make a shituf mabuot, mishtatfin, we are able to use it. Now, ma'arvin b'chatzerot u'mishtatfin b'mabui, we make an eruv with courtyards and a shituf with the alleyways. Shelo lishkach Torat eruv min hatinokot, so that the statute of establishing an eruv is not forgotten by children. In other words, that they will learn this practice. Sheyamru, lest they say, Avotenu lo irvu divrei Rabbi Meir, lest they say our ancestors did not practice eruv. This is the view of Rabbi Meir. V'chachamim omrim, but the sages say, O me'arvin, O mishtatfin. Either one makes an eruv, or one makes shituf mabuot. Plige ba Rabbi Nechuni v'Rabba, and there's an argument between Rabbi Nechuni and Rabba. Chad amar bepat dekuli alma lo plige, v'chad asagi. Okay, according to one, says that regarding bread, everybody doesn't disagree that in one situation it's sufficient. Ki plige biyayin. But what they argue about, okay, is whether or not the shituf can be made with wine. Okay, excuse me. Okay, and the Gemara, just to go over just a tiny bit to finish up. Bechad amar b'yayin, and the other said, no, but they can agree with wine, the kuli alma lo plige. That's not what they're arguing about. Okay, the ba'inin tarte. Okay, why? Because we say that they need two, both shituf and eruv. Ki plige b'pat. What they're arguing about is whether they can use the bread. Okay, and we're going to see tomorrow, okay, that the Gemara is going to bring a challenge on this issue. So that's where we'll pick up tomorrow. Okay, everybody, take care, stay well. All right, and we'll see you at 8:30 tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Leave.